We used to laugh and say, oh, my grandma's going to jail, but we knew she was going to come out. So it's really interesting that I minister sort of the same way as a lawyer that my grandmother did.
Willie D. Live.
Because people that have resources, they're going to be able to afford a lawyer or have access to power. And so I feel the best about what I do when I'm helping people who but for me wouldn't survive. And I'm almost certain I got that from my grandmother. My grandmother used to be a member of a group called Women for Justice. She was an elder at Shape Community Center.
Shout out to Lloyd.
And yes,
Lloyd.
yes, and she also watched. Lloyd was friends with my father, and my grandmother used to watch Lloyd, but she was an elder, and she would go to jail. So it's really funny now. My grandmother would go to jail 2 or 3 times a week with Women for Justice to bring the women who were incarcerated paper to write to their families, envelopes, socks, and give them commissary, money for commissary, because some people don't have their family to help them when they're locked up. And so we used to laugh and say, oh, my grandma's going to jail, but we knew she was going to come out. So it's really interesting that I minister sort of the same way as a lawyer that my grandmother did. So my grandmother taught me that I have to fight for the little guy, and so did my mother. My mother was around when Shape Center was founded, which it was Sudan Art before it was Shape Community Center. And so my mother was an activist. My grandmother was an activist. My mother was an activist at Texas Southern. So I was raised with Esther King. Omowale Lathuli is his name now, but he used to be Dwight Allen, Gene Locke, Esther King, Thomas Melanson. I mean, I remember these people. And so there's a whole bunch of us movement kids where our parents made us go sit and read while they schemed about how to get Wheeler Avenue closed off because it used to be open and students used to get hit by cars and stuff. So, and they were prepared to be locked up, you know, and so when that's what you watch your mom do, then even though at the time I thought I had the meanest mother in the world, like, how come I can't go outside and play like the other kids? And she's like, nah, you gonna sit your little self right here. She didn't say self.
Right.
You gonna sit your little self right here and you gonna do this. Because you're a child and I'm an adult. And there's some things in life more important than playing. And so when your mother raises you like that, then you feel an obligation. And when you get older, you realize why she did it. And come to find out, I did the same thing with my son. My son is now a lawyer. We practice law together. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Congrats. I mean, how proud of a moment was that when he decided that he was going to pursue law?
So I didn't know that he was going to pursue law until he was already accepted to law school. So first of all, he always told me that he would never be a lawyer because I started law school when he was 5 months and we just struggled. Because I was in an abusive relationship with his father. I was trying my best to continue breathing. I mean, been strangled, raped, all those things, and didn't drop out of law school. I stayed and I graduated, and then I just struggled. I was a single mother, and the village helped me raise my child. And I took him to law school with me. I was breastfeeding in class. There were 7 new mothers when I started law school. 6 of them dropped out. But I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So I knew kids can get into most stuff and require more attention the older they get. When they're little bitty, they sleep a lot. So if you just slap a titty in the mouth and breastfeed them, they'll go to sleep and you can do your work. And none of the other women who dropped out of law school went back because kids just can get into most stuff as they get older. And that was, I guess, the benefit of me having been the oldest of 5. And so I can tell you one of the lessons, I laugh at this, about how I can't, just because I have something doesn't give me the right to treat others who have less worse, and I have to share what I have. So this is how I learned that lesson. My mother worked at the post office, and so I had a piece of gum. I told you my grandparents had 12 kids, so it's a bunch of grandkids. We're all about the same age, or at least the older ones, we're all about the same age. And some of our parents had more than others. right? And my mother was one of the ones that could afford for me to have gum. So my grandmother would drive to our respective elementary schools, pick us up, and watch us at the house until our parents came to get us. And so I had a piece of Wrigley Spearmint gum, and I was getting ready to put that gum in my mouth in front of my cousins. I didn't offer them any. My grandmother took that piece of gum out of my hand, and she literally ripped that piece of gum into like 10 little pieces. I had this much. My gum was this thick. I was very, very, very upset about that. Like, why'd you take my gum?
And was she
told me, and she
everybody?
distributed it to my cousins.
Yeah.
She said, "You don't get to eat in front of them. I mean, if you didn't want to share it, you should have waited till you got home."
Huh.
And so I always think of that one piece of that Wrigley Spearmint gum that was divided into like 10 pieces, and all my cousins got it. So I learned a bunch of really good lessons as a kid that I don't really think I appreciated until I got older. But I definitely appreciate them.